Can war bring unity? Can one king and one family rule over many nations? What happens when evil threatens this balance? Today's episode is about the history and politics of Hyrule. If you're already a Zelda fan, maybe this will add some depth to an IP you already love. Or maybe Zelda just a random game, and this will be the catalyst for you to try it out. I am your host, Matthew Winter, and we are joined by the Tejas, the TJ Blackwell. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. A nice proper introduction every once in a while feels nice.
Yeah.
I'm no politician. I can do without the grandstanding. As bit of a bit as it might be.
Yeah. That being said, this is our political thing. I forget in this second what we call it. The primarily political. So with that being said, TJ, name a bad actor in politics, real or otherwise.
Man, just bad actors. I gotta think, I know we have it in the outline. I don't know if anyone said it though yet. Lex Luthor. Horrible.
Oh yeah, he does get into politics, doesn't he?
Yeah, he runs for mayor.
Yeah.
Which is a big deal in a big city. So
Yeah, for sure. That you actually have some power.
Yeah. And he's just he's so clown. He's so clowny.
Right.
I really think we got to do something about Superman. Come on, dude.
Yeah, there's so much potential there. Yeah, and then I think, oh gosh, who am I thinking? So my problem is I don't always remember names. So I'm just like the one guy from the thing that did the thing, and then you're supposed to be like, yeah, that guy. But
yeah, I know you do.
No. The bad actors in politics, fictional or otherwise. Gosh, I mean, I just gotta think.
I think I said Kim Jong-il for the first one. So
nice. I mean, very true. See, I'm not super political in general, which is why me hosting this is interesting. But let's just go for a political bad actor. I'm trying to think.
I'd say Ronald Reagan. This movie's right.
No, that doesn't work. Oh gosh, you know what? Let's just go for one of my loves. Let's go for Gundam. Let's say Daegwon Zabi.
Oh yeah, classic.
Yep. Okay. As always, please rate and review our show on Podchaser, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Like, subscribe, follow, share, all of the things, all of the places. Please, we appreciate the likes. And we want to thank our newest patron, Jonathan Augustin. And if you would like to support the show, you can do so through Patreon, Captivate, or Apple Podcasts. If the subscription model's not your thing, we do sell merch. We have cups, bags, shirts, all the things that you want to have with our awesome Superman SG logo on it, as well as other merch. So check that out as well.
Mm-hmm. One-time donations are also a thing we can do.
Mm-hmm.
I think through Captivate, or I think even Patreon might have just like an option for that now.
Yeah, I think that was some of the more recent changes. Yes, so you do not have to do a monthly support thing. There are one-time purchase options as well. All help is appreciated. We love you all. This is our primarily political series where we get political. Imagine that. It's in the name. If you enjoy this series, there is more, and the link will be in the description for all the episodes. So let's get started on Zelda, shall we?
Let's.
Okay. So tons of games, massive franchises, split timelines, thousands and thousands, beyond 10,000 years worth of story. And we don't know tons directly per the narrative of the, political whatever of Hyrule, but there are some things we know. So we do know that there have been civil wars amongst the people groups within the Kingdom of Hyrule. There's been, imprisoning wars, various other things like that. But let's start, I think, our discussion on this idea of civil war and how, at least in the case of Hyrule, it actually brought unity to the land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, that is like, I guess that is the end goal, technically, of a civil war, is to unify the country one way or the other.
Right.
But Hyrule's is interesting in particular, I think, because we don't get a ton of information on it, but we know because it happened that, like, at one point, Ganondorf was loyal to Hyrule.
Uh-huh.
Which is, you never think about that. Ganon's just like a good dude, nice king, leader of the Gerudo people.
Yeah. And so we don't know tons. We do know that it was the Gerudo essentially versus everybody else.
Yeah. Which is, seems a little unfair, honestly.
It does. Yeah, absolutely. But we know, and then so we, in the end, at least in Ocarina of Time, which is the game that happens immediately after this civil war, the Gerudo are still a separate peoples.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Gorons and the Zora and the Hylians that make up, make up the rest of it. In other games further down the timeline, though, we do see the Gerudo as part of this unified kingdom.
Yeah. Which is, I feel like it does a lot of people, a lot of people's first Zelda game was like Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Which is fun. It's a great game. But you miss out on this. You miss out on like the old lore where there's a reason they're all separated. Because Breath of the Wild doesn't really provide that for you.
Right. I mean, it's 10,000 years in the future from whatever the last thing that happened before it was.
Yeah.
And then there are, thousands of years of games timeline before that 10,000 year gap. So this, and a lot of stuff we just don't know, which is why it is the Legend of Zelda. Because we don't know. There's a lot we don't know.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting things is the monarchy in Hyrule. So gosh, you almost have to leave Tears of the Kingdom out and look at every other game, because other than that game, you've always got this line of literally the Hyrule family, right? Because you have King Rome, Bosphorus, Hyrule.
Yeah. And then, King Harkinian.
Mm-hmm.
A shout out to the classic. The terrible, terrible, I don't even remember what they were called. Just, I couldn't get a picture to work on our slides of King Harkinian from like the terrible, like,
was that the CDI
SNES
game
movie? Yes, CDI. Yeah. Was it Adventure in Hyrule?
Something. Oh man, yeah. But yes. But it's interesting because like the Zora have their own king. You've got King Dorphan. And then whatever the name of the king was in Twilight Princess, in Ocarina of Time, of the king of the Zora, but like they have their own monarchy. And yet they seem to ultimately be more than allies. They seem to be subservient to the king of Hyrule.
Yeah, so like each race does have their own political system, which in most cases just ends up answering to King Hyrule anyway.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it is interesting. The only thing I can think of, the only thing I can think of, man, we're doing this in the wrong order, but that's okay. Because the only thing I can think of, like historically, real life ish wise, that is similar to this is the Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Because you have the Holy Roman Emperor, technically, that was like the emperor, but then each country or feudal state or whatever, they all had their own kings that ruled their own peoples. That's kind of the only real version of this that we have. I mean, and that lasted, gosh, for
a little while.
I'm trying to think the whole about 1100 years, 1,000 years, something like that. Charlemagne was put in place in the 8th century. It was 7 something. And then the last vestiges of the Holy Roman Empire finally broke apart in the early 19th century.
Yeah, they almost function like dukes, rather than kings. For like the Goron king, which was Ganondorf, but the Goron queen since then usually is just in charge of Gerudos until the king has something to say that overrides that. They've kind of got their own like federation going on.
Yeah.
Or instead of federal level regulations, they just have like, well, King Hyrule says to do this, but we're going to do it a little different.
Right. And it's very interesting too. It's a good chance to discuss. And we have some of this being Americans, but like ultimately we all end up being subject to just what becomes American culture, rather than us bringing in. But like what we have in a system, like what we have in Zelda, where we have these regents or these dukes or whatever, these secondary leaders of their own people groups, is that each literally race, in this case, that they're not just all Hylians living in different places, they're literally different races. But they each get to maintain and keep their own cultural identity.
Yeah, they are a lot more secular than Americans, than people, because we are all people. And ever since the internet, especially the information age, there's basically no boundary really for most people.
Right. And it's that, but like it's all like the result of that is almost a uniculture, though. And then there are certain European countries, like Denmark, for example, where if you move to Denmark, you have to pledge to be Danish and assimilate into their culture. So you're not a Danish American or a Danish whatever you were before. You're just Danish. So there's a loss of a mixing of cultures and like a sharing of ideas, and there's just assimilation and what's the word, syncretism.
Yeah. Yeah, we miss out on that being American because you can't really preserve the culture very well of a race that we killed most of when we got here. Pretty
Right.
difficult.
Yeah. Or even like even with immigration, like legal or otherwise, people get here and they become American. They don't keep their socio-political culture that they came from.
Yeah,
They
well,
they
it
assume ours.
depends. It depends.
Yeah, I mean, it depends some, but just not in the
Not like this.
sense,
Yeah,
not like this,
not like this at all.
not like this at all.
So
Where,
yeah, they'll come
um,
pay their taxes,
yep.
but American.
And so there's, and then with Ganondorf, we have the idea of usurpers and rival kings.
I do love Ganon. I've always loved Ganon. This is Demise, technically.
Yep,
But come on,
yep.
that's Ganondorf. Let's not kid ourselves.
Well, it's proto Ganondorf, I guess, technically, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, doing all this out of order, but that's fine. So I guess the real question, or kind of the deeper question, to go deeper, because so the Hylians have, well, so we've got the origin story, right? In Ocarina of Time, that the three goddesses create the world: Din, Nehru, and Farora, creating the land, sea, and air. They leave this world. They leave behind the Triforce, and the goddess Hylia is given the duty of preserving and protecting the Triforce, and the Hylians essentially. I mean, we don't know a lot about Hylian religion, but we know they, in some way at least, pay homage to, worship Hylia. The Triforce symbologies all over this stuff, all over their shields and all of their iconography. So the question becomes, right, if this religious symbology is the heart of their culture, and if Zelda herself is the continual reincarnation of the goddess Hylia, like we find out in Skyward Sword, um, does the kingdom of Hyrule have a theonomy,
Yeah.
or
I think so.
a theocracy?
I think it's well, I think it's closer to a theocracy most of the time because Zelda is not the one ruling. Usually.
Right.
But that remains that all of Hyrule is recognizing the reincarnation of Hylia as their princess.
Uh-huh.
And the reason she's not, the queen, is because then it wouldn't be as cool for Zelda to have or for Link to have a crush on her. For, gameplay relatability purposes.
Right. And also, let's be honest, the bad guy never kidnaps the queen.
Never.
They kidnap the princess.
Yeah. The queen's always just not there.
So if she was the queen, there'd be no story.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to take some things in acceptance with it being a video game. That's the reason.
But that being said, and I think this is probably the most important part of this discussion for really our not just our current political climate, but really we can look through history and just see this as a recurring theme in history in general. is this discussion of theonomy. It's spicy, but it is relevant. So, TJ, is the law of God for everyone, and should it be enforced?
I don't think it is for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's not for me to say. Like, my word is the way you should live your life. I believe that, but I do not believe in forcing others into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
That
I've never gone along with that line of thinking.
yeah,
It's like,
because
you have to follow the Bible. You have to listen to this.
I mean that's really at the heart of this question. And like whether we're talking God like Elohim Yahweh God, or we're talking Hylia in this sense, or whatever the God may be, is the law of that God for everyone, or is it only for their followers?
Yeah, in this situation, it's for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You're in the kingdom. It's not. It is. That's one kingdom under God, Helia, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And then to completely go off script here, what do we think? So what do we think about the guiding principles for a society of wisdom, courage, and power?
I mean, typically what we see in Hyrule is that power is not one of them, because power is always possessed by Ganon,
Right.
Tamaz, Girahim. Power is never a piece of the Triforce that actually is involved in Hyrule. And is that the reason Hyrule's always in a state of ruin? Who knows? Could be. But I do think wisdom and courage are, at least in this context, fantastic, pillars of community, society,
Yeah.
which, I feel like has fallen a little bit out of vogue in today's age, because you don't have to, go to war, hunt for your food.
Right.
God, the next generation's not as stressed on it in our culture, at least. So I think it would help a lot if we also had the guiding principles of be courageous, be wise. I don't agree with the power, because power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Well, so so power by itself, which is what we see in the Triforce, because the Triforce is essentially split between the three persons. But in conjunction, like this actually, so I was having a discussion with Christian a little bit ago, because I recorded an episode before this, and a very similar theme came up. Like power is needed and it is necessary, because I think when you have wisdom and even courage, right? But if you take that power out of it, you no longer have the drive or the passion to do anything with your wisdom. You're just wise.
Yep. Yeah, and I think
So
that is the point that they try to get across, splitting up the Triforce, because once it's split, the kingdom does not prosper, and that's
right.
like that's your goal in most of the games. Is like get the Triforce of courage and then get the Triforce of power back.
Right, because we need so power in and of itself, I don't think is bad. And I absolutely think our society needs people who are wise. It needs people who are courageous, and it needs people who are powerful. But they exist in a way to complement each other. They're not these competing ideas, which is what I think the Triforce really helps illustrate. Because if you possess wisdom, then you know when to use your power and when not to. And like if you possess courage, you then have the courage to speak those words of wisdom and power when it is appropriate to do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is really, I think, thematically well done.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you have to look big picture context when you're thinking about it this way.
Yeah,
Because it's not something the game's just going to come out and say like, "Hey, Hyrule, yeah, we can't really do anything without the Triforce of Power because we just can't do it. No, we don't have the power, literally."
right.
It's there.
Yeah, but I just, well, like even in it could be the political climate that we're in, where we just have this bad view of power, and so many of us are anti-authoritarian, and that power corrupts and power is bad and whatever. But I'm going to restate again that I think power in relationship with wisdom and with courage is a necessity. You have to have all of the things to have a society that is in balance.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why, Hyrule declines over and over and over again, and there's some kind of war or conflict or whatever because the Triforce gets split, and then it has to be brought back together to bring peace and unity and prosperity to the kingdom, because you have to have all the pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we all honestly, as an American, we kind of have our own Triforce. The president is the Triforce of Power, and then just choose the other two to be whichever. Neither of them are really that accurate. But we also do have a 3-part system. Ours is a little different because
Right.
as a society, we hate absolute power, and we said nope,
Right.
can't have that. No king here.
Right. And so we in theory have our 3 branches of government that are supposed to check and balance each other. Like wisdom, courage, and power. Not that they don't exactly correlate, but the president with the federal power to enact whatever. You have the judicial branch that is there to reside and say what laws are constitutional and which laws aren't. And then you have the legislative branch, which is actually supposed to essentially take the vision and the leadership of the federal branch and enact it into law and pass bills and whatever, under the guidance of the judicial that decides whether or not it's constitutional. So that's how it's supposed to work. Mm-hmm. That is completely out of balance right now. And we have both sides vying to try and take over all of the branches and stack them, and then they no longer check and balance.
Yeah.
And so that
they do a lot of checking. They don't do a lot of balancing.
Right. Lots of checking and checking and checking and checking. And
yeah, it's like hockey in the 80s. Nothing but hip checks.
Be that, or I was gonna say a poker game that just keeps going.
Nobody has a good hand. You all just check. No one's betting anything.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where we're at right now.
Yeah. Or it's like, well, I don't think he's got a good hand, so I'm gonna check. Or where we're at, it's more like if checking your own hand prevents them from raising, so we just check. It's like, well, I don't think it's that bad of an idea, but I don't want the legislative branch to do anything today, so.
So what are some things? Totally off script. I love it. What are some things that we, as believers, as the priest geeks we are, can in our own lives, in our own circles, whether it be in our churches or at our jobs or in our, local communities or even broader, like, what can we do to be a part of this balance?
Well, there's a lot of ways to get into government. If you want to get that involved, of course, you can vote. You can vote for almost every position at every level. Get out into your local elections, vote mayor, sheriff, fire chief, whatever else they let you vote for in your town. That makes a big difference. A lot of towns are small enough for you to know your mayor. I know my mayor. Great dude. Run for mayor. You can just do that. You can just run for mayor. If you want to make a difference. You probably won't win your election, but you can run, you can meet people if you want to get that involved. And then that opens up the doors to run for, ran for mayor. Well, why don't I just take that, keep running, maybe run a couple of times, maybe even get the spot. You run for mayor, be mayor for a little while, run for senator.
Yep.
That's kind of the way it works. It's like getting promoted in a corporation almost. Your entry level political positions, maybe just run for town hall, be on the city council.
Right.
If you want it, you can get even smaller than that. Be PTA for like your district school.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to get politically active in this country if you're willing to engage with the system.
Right.
Which that's the part that dissuades most people because it gets pretty cliquey. I was on the mayor's youth council for my hometown, which is pretty cool. We got one vote as a group. And then, each city council member gets their own vote. But there we go. And I could have, if I had wanted to keep doing that, I could have, ran for city council, ran for mayor. I don't want to. Seems kind of exhausting.
Right. So that's one aspect. I think, for me, more specifically, just kind of keeping with the theme too, like I was thinking, like, if you are in a community where there's a lot of power thrown around, a lot of unbridled power, whatever, what can you do to be the wisdom in that circle, or to bring to bring the courage, or like if you have a lot of people with the courage to do things but they don't know what to do, how can you bring wisdom to the situation? Because I don't know, I read a book a while ago on the psychology of Zelda, and since then I have just kind of been stuck on this idea of seeing the Triforce just everywhere, and these ideas of courage and wisdom and power really as the ideals of living a balanced life and having even just a balanced psyche, making sure that your ambition is checked by your wisdom, and that you have the courage to actually go after the things that you want to go after. And man, if we could do that as a society, because here's the thing, it's kind of like the church, right? And gifts and all of that. Some people are teachers. Some people are evangelists. Some people, we have our different, but when we use those gifts as a body and for the body, we possess all the gifts. So in the same way, as a society, we should be asking, okay, who do we have who's a powerful person? Or I don't mean that in a way of someone who currently possesses power, like they're in authority. I mean, like, just like as a person, right? Their personality, their whatever, they're a person of power.
Yeah. Usually it's pretty easy to tell when you know one.
Yeah. So how do we take this? How do we take this person of power and surround them with people who are wise and give them the courage to act?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Or often Um, equally hard, there are a lot of people. I mean, you wouldn't think so watching the internet, but there are a lot of wise people out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not popular, but there are a lot of people in our society with wisdom. And so, what can we do to find that wisdom in our midst and empower it and give it the courage to use its power to make a difference?
Yeah, I think largely we need to stop being so focused on ourselves, let other people talk, listen to other people, engage with them on a level beyond, hi, how are you?
What?
Hear about me for a minute. Uh, but there's a lot of people who, don't have all three parts of the Triforce, so they aren't going to have the wisdom and the courage necessary to tell people about it and the power necessary to put that into effect.
Yeah.
We just listen. And I think what a lot of people miss is that the church is supposed to be a reflection of the community, which is to say the community should work like the church.
Right.
We work together. We have the same gifts. We have everything we need to prosper.
Right. But then when the church isn't acting like the church, and society doesn't really have that example to follow, we kind of end up where we are right now.
Yep. Fallen.
Absolutely.
Fallen. And it's
So
not as simple as, going to fight Ganondorf.
man, if life was that simple, if there was just some big bad to take out, although we do live in a political climate right now where they want to make you think it is that easy. We just have to take out the big bad, whichever side you're on. The other side's the big bad, and that everything will be okay. But life, my friends, is not that simple. There is no big bad to take out.
Yeah.
Often you are the big bad.
Yeah, me specifically, me, TJ, I'm the big bad.
Yourself, honored listener. There, because these are all good. These are all good qualities, even power. And I think about it in the sense that even gifts have like an inverse. There's a positive and there's a negative. So my challenge, I know this is supposed to be a political episode, but I'm not a very political person. I can't help but get teachy. It's just, that's how I am. So the challenge becomes, if you are a person of power, are you responsible with your power, or are you the big bad in your life and in your situations? If you are a person of wisdom, is this wisdom that you keep to yourself? Or are you gently and patiently wise to those who to those not only who are in your life, but just as you encounter, whatever. And those of us who are courageous, are we using that courage in honorable ways, or are we going after the wrong things?
Yep. If you ask me, everyone's their own big bad.
Yeah,
Pride
absolutely.
You got to get rid of the pride issue.
Yeah.
Not that kind of pride. That's fine. Personal pride is the devil.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I'm trying to think. We're doing this all kind of backwards, but I'm just gonna do it here anyway. So, what is your relationship to Zelda?
So Zelda's always just kind of been around, you know.
Mhm.
Growing up, I had a Game Boy, or my sister had a Game Boy
Mhm.
Color, then I had a Game Boy
Okay.
Advance, or
So it
the
was
other way
what,
around.
Seasons and Ages?
Minish Cap.
Okay.
So we had Minish Cap, and there was one other one, which probably was Seasons, but I don't really remember because all I
Okay.
remember from the other one I played when I was young was playing as Navi.
Mm.
Don't remember. Don't remember what game. But the first one I remember is Minish Cap,
Okay.
which I found. I got one for us, and I was looking at this picture, and I was like, "Is Minish Cap on?" It took me forever to find Minish Cap, just sitting there, pretty much right in the middle.
Yep, it's on
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I
It's
was just
just
blown away. But Minish Cap was the
yeah.
first one for me that I remember playing,
Hmm.
and then I've been back since then. I played Wind Waker not long after that, which I think it would be more fair to say I remember Wind Waker better because I
Mm-hmm.
do. But Wind Waker is, to me, still like top two. I like
Yeah.
it. Like it's second for me, right behind Breath of the Wild.
I didn't like it at the time it came out. Because like we just had Zelda enter 3D with the Nintendo 64. We had Ocarina of Time and we had Majora's Mask. And then when the GameCube hits, we get this cartoon.
Beautiful
We get
cartoon.
Wind Waker. And at the time, I just couldn't do it. You're going back and playing the game later. I'm like, wow, man, King Rome is a badass, and the story in this game is phenomenal. Gosh, was I stupid? But at the time when Wind Waker came out, I couldn't do it. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. It would have been the early '90s, I think. Was it yeah, at every Saturday my grandma would take me to my cousins and they had a Nintendo because like I didn't have any video games or computers or anything like that growing up until I was a little bit older. But man, every weekend I lived on my cousin's NES. So my first Zelda was the first Zelda. It came out the year I was born. We are the same age.
Nice.
And then SNES, Link to the Past. I played that one. And then obviously Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I played Oracle of Seasons. My parents would only buy me one of the Zelda games. Like I wanted both, and they're like, "You already have a Zelda game. You don't. Why do you need
Yeah.
both?" So, Seasons was my Oracle of choice. And then I played Twilight Princess, which is still to this day. I mean, I love New Zelda. Breath of the Wild it is great. Tears of the Kingdom is a lot of fun, but Twilight Princess to me, maybe it's where I was at in life, and I was just going through stuff, and it's more kind of dark, gothic-y kind of whatever. Just hit that part of my soul of where I was at in my life at the time. But Twilight Princess to me is my favorite. My actual avatar is based on Twilight Princess Link. That's why I have it has the chainmail and all that underneath. Because that was the first game where Link looked a little bit more adult.
Yeah. I think my Twilight Princess, honestly, I'm putting in my top 5 every time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Twilight Princess, I feel like got a lot of hate when it came out, but
it did. But yeah,
it's fun. I like to be a
top.
wolf sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, top 5, and then maybe rate Zelda as a whole.
Top 5. Yeah. So my top 5 probably,
Mm-hmm.
I'd go Breath of the Wild, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Majora's Mask. Is that 5? Is that 4?
What'd you do? You did Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Majora's Mask.
Uh-huh.
I'm not gonna put Skyward Sword, and Skyward Sword's still clunky. I don't know. Like thinking back on it, I like Skyward Sword a lot. Trying to play it again, not so much.
Yeah.
Fifth, I'll give it to Ocarina of Time for fifth.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
I don't know. I will say I really like Spirit Tracks. A lot of hate. Not a very played Zelda game.
That's true.
I like Spirit Tracks a lot.
And then the franchise as a whole, what do we think?
Oh, 10. Easy.
Yeah. I think Zelda is one of the few things in my life I can comfortably rate a 10. As if the listeners have been paying attention, I don't give out 10s. I'm a very harsh critic of everything.
Me too.
But Zelda is a 10.
Yeah.
And
easy. The worst game in the franchise is probably an 8.
Yeah.
Link's crossbow training. Easy 8 out of 10.
I haven't even played that one. I didn't play any of the stuff for the Wii. When I played Twilight Princess, I played the GameCube port that was flipped so that I could use a controller.
Yeah, fair.
Because that's remains the entire issue with why Skyward Sword is so clunky is the controls.
Yeah. Still fun though.
Yeah, I mean, great
it's
story.
Just not comfortable.
It's nice to have a backstory and kind of have the beginning of all the things, or is it? Which? Oh man, Tears of the Kingdom. What you do, Nintendo? What you do? But gosh, a top 5. Yeah, it's hard for me to, because they're all so good in their own way, and like it's hard for me to remove a game's influence from how I actually feel about a given game. Because if you're gonna do influence, I mean, you have to go with the original Zelda, which for the time was an open world game.
Yeah,
you could go anywhere. You could play the levels in the wrong order. You could, yeah. But gosh, Link to the Past introduced the Master Sword. You have Ocarina of Time that launched really modern 3D Zelda until it was redefined by Breath of the Wild.
Right. Gosh. I feel like Ocarina of Time is got to be up there for cultural impact.
Yeah.
Because you can just go outside and meet somebody who knows how to play an ocarina.
Yeah. So I think for me overall, I think Twilight Princess is going to be my number 1. It took the Ocarina of Time format and perfected it by adding in special skills and some of those other things that were added in Twilight Princess by learning the helm splitter and all of those sorts of things where you had special moves. Loved that aspect. So Twilight Princess. But I absolutely love Breath of the Wild. It's a fantastic game, like Zelda tends to do. It has completely pushed all gaming forward as far as how big maps are and how open a world can be and all of those sorts of things. Like it took the Dark Souls format and moved it to 11. And then but there's so much about Breath of the Wild that's also just not like Zelda. As far as just the lack of dungeons, and there's not really There's not really puzzles that you have to conquer to progress. I mean, there's the shrines and those puzzles, but like you can do them in any order and you don't get like messed up if you miss one, or like there's not a. So I love Breath of the Wild, but because I feel like it's missing some of the things that make Zelda Zelda, it's my number 2. So you have Twilight Princess, you have Breath of the Wild. Tears of the Kingdom, as much as I hate it for basically either just spawning a new timeline or retconning or whatever, again, completely pushing game mechanics to an entirely new level, doing things games have never done before as far as the ultra hand ability and your ability to literally create whatever you can imagine in the game and use it as a tool or a weapon or whatever. We're like Zelda Minecraft here at this point. Love it. So that's going to be, despite its shortcomings, that's my number 3. And then probably Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past. Zelda as a whole, absolutely a 10. With the timeline and how they try and make it fit all together and keep it consistent, and just like the homages to the past and all the things like that. I don't know. Like I'm not a huge gamer, but I cannot imagine my life without Zelda in it.
Right. I feel like that's the case for a lot of people too.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you ask non-gamers what their favorite game is, a lot of them are probably going to say Zelda.
Yeah. It's just, it's literally part of my DNA. Yeah. I mean, not literally, but
No, literally. It's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get a microscope on a, petri dish of Matthew's skin, and it's dangerous to go alone. Take this.
Absolutely. So are there any of the questions that we've asked or kind of more political stuff we've touched on that you would like to revisit before we close? Maybe.
I think everyone should go back and try out Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. Those 2 games get a lot of hate.
They do.
They're fun.
Yeah.
Maybe try being like 11 when you do it.
Yeah. Be a kid.
Yeah, be a kid. Pretend it's like you're playing Zelda for the first time again.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So we started in the beginning, as we always do, by identifying a bad political actor. Who do you identify as a positive political actor? Someone who's political, who either uses that power for good, or they use that power responsibly in a way where they're a good actor.
Well, I think to stay on brand here, I'm gonna say it's Princess Zelda. No, she literally puts her life on the line in most of these games, just to stop the kingdom from falling apart.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one for sure. I'm trying to think. It's not exactly a political position, but I think of someone like Commissioner Gordon.
That's political.
Yeah.
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 That's like head sheriff, but for a big city.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so I definitely think of Commissioner Gordon, and that's probably just because I've been watching a lot of Batman now that I have Max, but that's who comes to mind for me is Commissioner Gordon, because he has play the role of the law enforcement and being a commissioner and this political and figure or whatever, but he also has the wisdom and the courage to see Batman for the force of good that he is, protect Batman when he needs to, reach out to Batman when he has to. He's a good political actor.
Mm-hmm. He also supports Batman when he needs to.
Absolutely. So, once again, we will ask you to rate and review the show on your podcatcher of choice, Spotify, Apple, whatever. Like, review, rate, all the things. Tell your friends, or don't, but please do.
Please.
Tell your cousins. That's for you.
Thank you. Yeah. Check out our show, Whole Church Podcast.
Yes. And this is all possible because of Jonathan Augustin and other supporters. So once again, thank all of you who support the show and make this possible. And yeah, thanks for listening. And there will be a link in the description for the rest of the political series. And there's the king. Love that guy.
Love him.
As always. Gotta love him. And as always, thanks for listening. And remember, we are all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests.